a muscle contract inside, what are all the things that have to happen? The fact that we have an action potential going to the end of the axon, to those axon terminals, releasing acetylcholine to go across the synaptic cleft, then stimulate more action potentials to eventually release more calcium to eventually cause the muscle to contract and usually shorten. Now, there are some nice animation videos on Blackboard that kind of show all of that happening. You can actually see the things moving and the tropomyosin moving away from the active sites like you guys were asking about, and you can see the heads grabbing on, and you can see how that shortens the muscles. Like recommended, watch the little videos. They're nice little tutorial videos. But today, I can get this to go forward. Now that we know how muscle contracts, we're going to look at some other things that can affect how a muscle contracts. I have so many piles up here, I don't even know where to put my PowerPoint. This pile. I don't know if I need it or not. But a couple things when we're talking about muscles and muscles contracting, because we're really going to be talking today, will a whole muscle contract, won't a whole muscle contract? We're also going to look at the fact that contraction produces what's known as muscle tension. Now, anything that has T-O-N in it, for tone or tonic, means something that has to do with tension. They both start with a T, it makes it a little easier. And so when we're talking, you're going to see some of the words today that have that tone in it. And we want to know, will that muscle contraction produce some type of tension? And can we take that tension that we just produced and put it on some type of load? Can we lift a book? I was going to bring a book. Can we lift a book? Can we move an object? I'm like, what can we do with that tension? We can make a muscle contract, but for what? We want to be able to take that force that you just generated and move something, hopefully. Now, the contraction may or may not shorten a muscle. Now, another prefix that's up there is a lot of things have iso in it. Iso means the same. In math, an isosceles triangles has sides that are the same, at least two of them. When we're looking at metric, we're always talking about a measurement of length. At least we're going to use length for our metric today. An isometric contraction. Iso means the same, metric means length. It means the length of the muscle will not change. Now, I'm going to split this up because you're going to see isometric and isotonic through quite a few of these slides coming up. Sometimes it's hard. You're like, wait, what's moving? What's not moving? We're going to be constantly looking at, will the tension change versus will the length change? And I'm going to leave this up here. In an isometric, based on its name, what stays the same? The length does. The length will stay the same, which means the other thing's going to change. Either tension or length is going to change. And so in an isometric contraction, the length is always going to stay the same. The tension can change. Now, in Greek symbols, change means delta, which is a little triangle. So it doesn't shorten, but the muscle tension can increase. In an isotonic, what's isotonic mean then? Same what? Same tension, which means the other thing's going to change. The length will change. And so now your length of the muscle is going to change because your tension exceeded the load and you actually moved. Now, the force and how long, the duration of your contraction varies. There's different types of stimuli for making your muscle contract, and I'm like, there's different types of forces and intensities, and we're going to talk about that can determine what is the force that you're going to have your muscles contract and for how long can they contract. But I was like, isometric and isotonic comes up a lot. Now, your nervous system controls your muscle. The end of all those axons, you have axon terminals forming neuromuscular junction. Well, every muscle that you have, whole thing, every muscle, because some of them are a whole lot bigger than others, is served by at least one motor nerve. So one nerve comes off our spinal cords, is going to control every single muscle. I shouldn't say that. Every muscle is controlled by at least one nerve. I don't want to say it the other way around. One nerve, and a nerve is a whole bunch of axons. One nerve contains axons of up to hundreds of motor neurons. A neuron are those cells that have the dendrites and axons and axon terminals. So one nerve that comes off of your spinal cord can have hundreds of neurons all going out to your muscles to tell them to contract. Now, as the axons on those neurons go to the end, they will start to branch, and they have axon terminals at the end where they're going to control the muscle at the neuromuscular junction, which is what we talked about on Tuesday. Now, what we call as a motor unit is one motor neuron, one cell, and all the muscle fibers it controls. Because inside one cell, you have more, or inside one muscle, you have more than one fiber. Your muscles can get quite large. There's a lot of fibers in there. There's a lot of cells in there. And one neuron can control many of those fibers because it branches. You have axons that branch, that go out and control the muscle. Now, the smaller the number that motor neuron controls, usually you have finer control. You have really fine control in your hands, even in your eyelids. You have very fine control. That generally is because you have smaller numbers of axons controlling them. Now, this is to show I've got two motor units. So a motor unit is one neuron, one cell, too short, and the muscle fibers it controls. So we're just looking at, this is the muscle, but we're going to go internal, and we're going to look that there's, I don't know, like 8 or 9 muscle fibers up here. That motor unit number 2, that's one neuron, one cell, one motor neuron, is going to branch several times. And it's going to control, this one's going to control 3 fibers, just 3 cells in the whole muscle itself. So this whole muscle, just 3 of the tiny little fibers are being controlled by motor unit number 2. Motor unit number 2 is going to branch and is going to control only 2 of the fibers that are in there. We want multiple neurons controlling the same muscle so that if you have damage to one, you can still move the muscle. And I'm like, we damage neurons all the time. And I'm like, but yet we don't lose full control of your muscles. We've got lots of motor neurons. We've got lots of neurons controlling different aspects and different fibers inside of there. Now, that motor unit, that one neuron that branches and controls several motor fibers, it does spread throughout the muscle. So it spreads throughout the muscle. So in that motor unit, we'll just pick on number 2. My motor unit number 2 up there, when an action potential, an electrical impulse, travels along that axon, and it's going to cause those 3 fibers to contract, those 3 fibers will contract. None of the other muscle will contract. And so I'm like, it causes a very small contraction in your muscle, almost to the point you're not even going to see it. Like if I'm telling my muscle to contract, I might be contracting. And I'm like, but you don't see it, only because just a few of those fibers are actually moving at a time. Oops, I didn't want to go back. It could be more than that. And I'm like, that was, I think for ease, they only did it. It can actually go up and branch to several hundred fibers. Now, your motor units in your muscle usually contract asynchronous. When you stick A at the beginning of something, what does it mean? Without. And when we're talking synchronous, it means they're not in time. They're not in synchrony. I don't know, good way to say that. They don't all contract at the exact same time. If we look at just these 2 motor units and knowing that there's a whole bunch of other motor units to control all the other fibers that are in there, we don't want all the motor units to all contract at the exact same time. We'd like this one to contract, and then a split second later this one to contract, and then a split second later another one to contract. If all of them contracted at the exact same time, you would constantly be walking around like doing this. You'd have twitches everywhere. And I'm like, you wouldn't have a nice control. We want them to contract a little bit at each time. It allows you to have nice, flowing movements with your muscles as you're constantly contracting small bits of them at a time. It also decreases fatigue. If all of a sudden you wanted to contract all of your muscle cells all at the exact same time, you're going to use up a lot of ATP and you're going to get fatigued pretty quickly. If you do it a little bit at a time while one's contracting and another one's relaxing, and restoring itself for contraction. Now, a twitch, when we talk about muscle contraction, we talk about it as a twitch. It just means your muscle's response, one motor unit, one single neuron, and the little muscle fibers that it controls. So if you have one little bit of action potential that controls just that one motor unit, yes, just those muscle fibers will contract. The thing is, one motor unit in your arm controlling just those few fibers that it controls, 2, 3, or more, is not enough to visually see a muscle move. Those few fibers are not going to, just stimulating those few muscle fibers and that whole muscle itself is not enough to make the entire muscle move. And so a twitch, it is a muscle contraction. We don't visually see it. For us to see it, we have to see it in a lab. And so we have to observe it in a lab. We use something that's called a myogram. It's just a record of your muscle, that we can actually see that there is something happening inside your muscle. And there's 3 phases that happen when your fiber has an action potential to it. There's going to be a latent period, because when you want that fiber to contract, it just doesn't spontaneously happen. You have to release calcium ions. They have to travel across, we have to then release acetylcholine to travel across the synaptic cleft, to then, travel an action potential, travel along the membrane, release more calcium. You've got a lot of stuff going on there. And so before you have that actual contraction, there is a latent period. Then you have a period of contraction where all the myosin heads are grabbing onto the actin. And then you have a period of relaxation where all the calcium that moved to go help the muscle contraction all go back. Now, muscle will contract faster than it relaxes. This is showing your basic muscle contraction. If you have a single stimulus, and in a lab they do this electrically, and you're going to have your latent period where you've got lots of moving of ions everywhere, then your muscle will contract, then eventually it will reset itself and relax. But the contraction happens a whole lot faster than the relaxation. Question? I would say if you're going to go muscle twitch, I would say it's 1 motor unit's response, and that's it. It's also not observable, if that helps. The other ones we can observe. And but usually if all of a sudden I've had it where my muscle's twitching, there's usually more than just one that's in there that's actually doing that at a time. When they talk about a muscle twitch, they're talking about small numbers. They're talking 1 motor unit controlling just its. If you actually visually see your muscle contracting or twitching, that's usually multiple motor units that are all doing the exact same thing. So similar basic idea, but we can visually see it, so more than 1 motor unit's being activated. Now, the twitch, the fact that we can make these contractions and we have the relaxation period, how strong that contraction is, how long that contraction is, can vary. Muscle twitches themselves usually are only observed in the lab. And that we can see that on a lab. Otherwise, all your normal muscle contraction is a nice, smooth, flowing motion that we are constantly firing action potentials at different fibers all the time. Now, this is to show just a comparison of different muscles. The speed at which muscle twitches happen, and is different between muscles themselves in the body. This is showing how fast your extraocular muscle is. Any guess where that is? Based on its name? Ocular. It's in the eye. It's one of the muscles that controls your eye. The fact that you can look around super, super fast, and we can have muscle twitches that happen very, very quickly in the eye. The gastrocnemius, any guess? It's the big calf muscle. And it's the big one when someone's like, oh, you've got a nice calf. That's that big bulge right there. Soleus is a harder one. Any guess? It's not in the front, though. I was going to say it's the one right underneath the gastrocnemius. I was going to say close. It is down on the leg, though. And I'm like, but they have different time periods. And I'm like, some of these muscles will contract faster. And I'm like, some of it comes based down to, I'm like, as we evolved, some of these are needed. We need faster contractions for survival, whether it's running, whether it's seeing. And I'm like, we need these muscles to contract very, very quickly. Now, we're going to change because we don't walk around just twitching everywhere, and we can't see these observable twitches, but yet we still have muscle contractions, and we're still sending electrical impulses. So most of our muscles, when they contract, do something that's known as a graded muscle response. It's mostly a variable muscle response. It's based on different strengths of contractions, different demands we want on our muscles. There's two things that we can control or change when we're trying to control our muscle contractions. We can change, whether we know we're doing it or not, the frequency of stimulation, how fast we are sending action potentials to your muscle. That's when we're talking about frequency. How fast are you sending information to your muscles to contract? And then, what is the strength of stimulation? We can send a stronger electrical signal, and a stronger electrical signal will generally produce a stronger muscle response. And so we can change that muscle contraction based on these two things. Now, we're first going to look at the frequency. This is your normal single stimulus. There's your stimulus. We had electrical impulse. You contracted, it relaxed, you're done. Oh, there's another one. Contracted, done. And I'm like, those are single stimulus. But we can speed up that frequency. And when we speed up the frequency of how fast we're sending electrical impulses, we actually get stronger responses from our muscle. You can contract your muscle and produce more tension. Now, what it shows up as is called a wave or temporal summation. Now, when you're talking about the sum of something, what are you doing in math? I was like, you're adding it up. You're getting a total. What we're going to do is we're going to increase the muscle frequency so that we don't allow it to reflex, or we don't allow it to relax. So there's your stimulus. Well, what if we don't allow it to relax? And then we put another stimulus right there. And I'm like, we're not going to allow it to relax. And if we don't allow it to relax, even more calcium is now available to uncover more active sites on actin. More myosin heads can grab on, and you can produce a stronger contraction. Now, this does allow you to produce smooth, continuous contractions. The fact that I can slowly move my muscle, I can lift something up. I wish I would have a big book. And I'm like, I could, pick up a book. And I'm like, I can add stuff onto the book, and I can have nice, smooth-flowing contractions. Because I'm like, whether it's how fast I'm firing information at that. Now, this is why it's called the wave summation, is that here's your stimulus, there's the contraction, but before you allow it to relax, there's another electrical stimulus, and that contraction, the tension on that muscle is even higher. Before it relaxes, you send another electrical stimulus until you reach really maximum tension that your muscle can do. So I'm like, it's that wave. We allow it to relax only a little bit, but not fully, so that you're constantly just opening up and making more calcium. Now, if you send enough electrical stimulus where there's absolutely no relaxation whatsoever, this is what we call as complete tetany. Your muscle is fully contracted and there's no relaxation whatsoever. You have your maximum tension on that muscle. Everyone's like, oh, is that bad? Well, it depends what you want. Depends what you're trying to do. If you're trying to hold something for a while, and I'm like, you want it steady. You're not going to be like, oh, I'm going to lift this up, and I'm going to drop it. I'm going to lift it up. And I'm like, if you're trying to hold something for a while, you need that complete diffused contraction to hold it. Problem is, if there's no relaxation, what's going to happen? It's going to get tired. I'm like, you can only hold, if I held a book, I could only hold it for so long, and your muscles are going to get fatigued. And I'm like, that you want to hold it. You're going to have a nice, sustained contraction. But at some point with no relaxation, your muscle's going to get fatigued. And then you do that full drop off. Usually, yes. It literally, it's always ion issues. And I'm like, and that, yes, all of a sudden the whole muscle will tighten up and contract. Yeah. Yay. Now, the other thing, other than changing stimulus, it's, well, how strong of a stimulus. So we're going to look at strength. And when we're talking about the strength of the stimulus that we're sending to our muscles, a couple terms, and I'm like, before I show you a picture. One, when we talk about recruitment, we're going to recruit, and I'm like, various types of motor units, which means we're going to control various muscle fibers to contract. The stronger the contraction, the more muscle fibers you will contract, and that's where it gets the recruitment. The more muscle fibers you can contract, the stronger your response. If you have a stimulus that's not very strong, you have what's known as subthreshold stimulus. It's just a really weak electrical impulse, and it's weak enough that it's not actually going to cause a muscle to contract. It's not enough electrical stimulus to, open the floodgates of sodium ions. It's not an electrical signal. It's not a strong enough electrical signal to cause action potentials, which means your muscle's not going to contract. It's too weak of electrical stimulus. That's your subthreshold. Threshold means it's just strong enough that you can now see an observable contraction. You've now recruited muscle fibers to contract. And then maximal stimulus is the strongest stimulus, the largest electrical signal that we can send our muscle that you're not actually going to see any other increase in muscle contraction after that. Now, I like my picture because I think this picture shows all of these way better. Oh, I'll go here first. I can go back. This is talking about the strength of your stimulus. It's all based on voltage. It's all ions moving. And if you have what's known as, subthreshold right here, my 1 and 2, these are really, really weak electrical signals. Not enough to cause muscle to contraction, because these weak electrical signals were not enough to excite any motor units. We didn't excite anything. We're not going to cause any contraction. And these little muscle cells, the fibers right there, are going to do absolutely nothing. They're not going to generate tension. It was not a strong enough electrical impulse. Eventually, when you hit threshold, you're going to excite a few motor units. You're going to make a few fibers contract, and you're going to finally now see an observable contraction. Won't be a strong one, but you have had enough electrical impulse to cause a contraction. The stronger the stimulus, the more fibers, they turn dark orange, the more fibers you're going to recruit. The more fibers you recruit, the stronger the tension on your muscle. The better, the bigger that tension, I'm going to say another way for it, and I'm like, the more force you can put behind that muscle. But then at some point, you're going to hit what's known as the maximal stimulus. At maximal stimulus, have you activated and excited every muscle fiber in here? Yeah. So if I send it more electrical information, can it recruit more fibers? No. You've already recruited them all at whatever that stimulus at 7 was. I don't care how much more electricity you send to your muscles to contract, there are no more muscle fibers to recruit. That's called the maximal stimulus. That's your maximal contraction. That's the most tension that your muscle will generate. Does not matter how much you tell your muscles to contract, and I'm like, you're only as strong as, these muscle fibers are that are there. And that's where you hit that maximum threshold. So your subthreshold stimulus, not enough electricity to actually cause the contraction. Threshold, minimal amount of electricity to finally see an observable contraction. And the maximal stimulus is the strongest stimulus that will increase force. Beyond that, you can't do anything else. Now, my notes that go with that. Muscle is going to contract more vigorously as the stimulus strength increases. Oops. It will contract more forcefully as the stimulus increases. The contraction force is controlled by recruitment. And I'm like, you're going to recruit and activate more fibers with the stronger electrical impulse. But beyond that maximal stimulus, there is no more increase in force. You've maxed out your muscle tension. You're done. It's as strong as you are. Now, recruiting different muscle fibers. It goes on a size principle. Motor units that control smaller fibers will always be the first ones activated. I like to say our body is efficient, lazy. And I'm like, if you can make a muscle contraction and you can do what you need to do by activating the smallest fibers, those are always the first one that's activated. So the motor units that control the smallest size of muscle fibers, they are always activated first. Then, as you strengthen in intensity in the electrical impulse, you'll start to then activate the larger fibers. So only the largest motor units are actually activated for the most powerful contractions. If you can do what you need to do with just activating the smallest, we go with that. So the smallest fiber is activated first, and then eventually the largest. Now, we can generate tension. And so I'm going to go back to my isotonic contractions. The tension is going to be the same, but the length can change. So an isotonic contraction, muscle changes in length so that we can move something. That's the purpose. And I'm like, the muscle changes in length so you can move something. My little lady, she's moving her little dumbbell. I want my marker. Now, there are two types of isotonic contractions. There are concentric and eccentric. They're still isotonic, so it's still the same tension. The difference comes into how does that muscle length change. In a concentric contraction, the muscle shortens to do work. In an eccentric, the muscle lengthens as it does work. If we're going to look at her bicep and she lifts this weight, this muscle is shortening as she does work and lifts it up. However, as she lowers it down, that muscle lengthens, but it still is generating force. This is why when you work out, the instructors are always like, make sure you go slow both ways. You're not just like this and then let gravity fall. If you have slow muscle contractions, you're doing twice as the work. You're generating force going up, but you're also generating force going down and lengthening the muscle. So I'm like, you can generate force going both ways, shortening muscles and lengthening muscles. This is showing isotonic, concentric. And so we're going to shorten the muscle. Same tension. And I'm like, my tension on the tendon, I'm still lifting the same exact weight, but I can shorten it. This is showing isotonic contraction. Again, it's going to be the same tension right there, but the length can shorten. So I'm like, this is lengthwise, and I'm like, and it shortens. Now, an isometric contraction, again, the length is the same, but the tension can change. Means the load, like the force you are putting on your muscles, is greater than the tension that muscle can develop. My example, if I push on this wall, I can change the tension I push on this wall. Oh, I'm just pushing on it a little bit. No, I'm really pushing on it. Is the wall moving? No. Am I changing the tension I put on there? Yes. The tension changes, but my muscles didn't move the wall, so my muscles didn't change in length. And so I'm like, I can change the amount of tension you put on your muscles without actually changing the length. If you tried to lift a car, you could just maybe lift it a little bit, or you can really try to lift a car. But if you can't actually lift a car, your muscles are not changing in length at all. But you can still change the tension that you're putting on those muscles. So your tension can increase to the muscle's capacity. I'm like, I can try to lift a car as much as I absolutely can, but that doesn't mean my muscle's actually going to change length. It's not going to shorten, it's not going to lengthen. But I can still generate a lot of force, trying to lift the car. You mean like if I lengthen one, will something else have to shorten? Yes, so like if I tried to move this wall, and I actually could move it, and I'm like, yes, then I would, at some point when I was moving it, my length would be changing because I was moving the wall, but at whatever force I put on that wall, that was the force that would move it, so the force would then change to be the same. So the muscle would be lengthening. So an isometric contraction, same length. The length does not change, but you can change the amount of tension. You can, use those muscles and generate a little tension, or you can really try to generate tension, but the length doesn't actually change. Now, muscle tone. Everyone wants nice muscle tone. I go work out. I would like to be toned. Well, what that actually means is that your muscles are always staying in a slightly contracted state. That's muscle tone. Now, if your muscles are always in a slightly contracted state, that usually means they're going to be slightly shortened, and they're going to bulge out a little bit, which means you're going to walk around and you're like, yeah, look at all my muscles, because they're always in a slightly contracted state. When someone is nicely toned, it means all those muscles are in a slightly contracted state and they're visible. You can see your muscles now. And I'm like, you're generating, trying to make your muscles bigger so that they look even bigger when you're in a relaxed state. Your muscles are never permanently relaxed. Now, it's usually because of different spinal reflexes that are constantly just sending information to those muscles. It keeps your muscles, though, and I'm like, ready to respond. They're already in a slightly contracted state. They are ready to do whatever you need them to do a whole lot faster. So it is good to be toned. Visually, people want to be toned, but it keeps your muscles healthy, firm, and ready to do whatever you need them to. I'm like, it's good. If you didn't know why you wanted to be toned, now you do. Now, for us to contract these muscles, we need energy to do it, and the main energy we need is ATP. What we need ATP for? We need it to we need it to detach the cross bridges, those myosin from the actin heads, because if you don't have that, that's where you get the rigor mortis. We need it to pump calcium back into the sarcoplasmic reticulum after we're done using it. We need it to control that sodium-potassium pump, to kick sodium out of the cells and put potassium back in. And I'm like, after we excite the muscle itself. Problem is, we can actually deplete all of our ATP in our muscles in about 4 to 6 seconds. That's not a lot, which means you can't do a lot. So we've got to figure out a way to replenish that ATP and do it really quickly, or your muscles are not going to be able to contract. So your ATP is generated by 3 different ways: anaerobically, aerobically, and using a chemical called creatine phosphate. Now, I don't think I have another slide on creatine phosphate. Based on its name, it's got phosphate in it. And if you add phosphate to adenosine diphosphate, and I'm like 2 phosphates plus a 3rd phosphate, we now get the adenosine triphosphate. So I'm like, it is a chemical that we can store in our muscles, the creatine phosphate, that has lots of energy itself. It's got lots of bonds we can break to release energy, and it also has the phosphate that allows us to generate ATP. The anaerobic pathway is we are going to take sugar, glucose, and we're going to break it down to make ATP through a process known as glycolysis. I think it's my next slide. There we go. Glycolysis is an anaerobic pathway, which means it doesn't require any oxygen to do this. We can make ATP without oxygen. Problem is not much of it. We only get about 2 ATP, a net of 2 ATP out of every molecule of glucose. It's not a lot of ATP, but it's enough to last, say, for about another 30 to 40 seconds of vigorous activity, which means you could run for about 30 to 40 seconds at a full sprint, and then that's all going to be gone too. Yep. Now, if we had oxygen available, as we break down glucose, I want a marker, it forms something known as pyruvic acid. So glucose becomes something known as pyruvic acid. That's a V. And out of that, we get a net of 2 ATP. And I say a net because it takes 2 ATP to start it, and then we get 4 out of it, so you made 2 overall. Now, if oxygen was present, that pyruvic acid would go into the mitochondria. Because what's the mitochondria known for? What's it do? I'm going to say it makes ATP. It's the powerhouse of the cell. And I'm like, but that's only if oxygen is present will that pyruvic acid go into the mitochondria. Now, why we run out of oxygen? Because you live in an aerobic environment. What happens though, when you are putting a lot of pressure on your muscles, you are making them work way beyond they normally work. Those bulging muscles that you're overworking will actually compress on your blood vessels. And so you lose the oxygen to your blood vessels, and you go into an anaerobic state in your muscles. You're still breathing oxygen and living, but your muscles are not getting the oxygen they need. Now, the problem is if oxygen is not present, because you put yourself into an anaerobic environment, you make that pyruvic acid, and I'm getting there, Mike. That pyruvic acid gets converted to lactic acid. So pyruvic acid is going to get converted into lactic acid. Does anyone know the symptom of producing lactic acid? Sore muscles the next day. If you've ever done any type of activity, any physical activity, and woke up and you were sore the next day, it means the muscles that are sore went into an anaerobic state. They made pyruvic acid, not enough oxygen to send them to the mitochondria, and they made lactic acid. That lactic acid is going to get diffused into the bloodstream. The symptom is that you know is it makes you sore. It's still energy. I mean, it still comes from the breakdown of glucose. So it can still be used as a fuel source in various parts of your body. There's still bonds we can break in there. Eventually, it can get converted back into pyruvic acid, and it can even, in the liver, go all the way back to glucose. But unfortunately, you're still going to be sore the next day. It takes a while for everything to convert back. Now, the why do we do this is, I mean, it doesn't make a lot of ATP and it makes you sore the next day. The big thing is, it makes ATP. It might not make a lot, but it makes it really fast. And so if you do have to sprint for 30 to 40 seconds, normally your ATP is gone in 4 to 6 seconds. Anaerobic respiration can give you a lot of ATP in a short amount of time, so that you can do whatever it is you need to do. You need to sprint to first base or whatever it is. And I'm like, it gives you enough ATP to do something for 30 to 40 seconds. Now, if oxygen is present, you know, you didn't overwork your muscles, you didn't constrict the blood vessels, and I'm like, that pyruvic acid will go into the mitochondria. Your aerobic pathway produces 95% of your ATP. Way more efficient. Instead of making 2 ATP, aerobically you can make closer to 30 ATP. And I'm like, it's way more efficient. Now, there's a whole bunch of chemical reactions that happen in the mitochondria. We're not going to go into all of cellular respiration today. And I'm like, but eventually it breaks the pyruvic acid down, makes lots and lots of ATP out of it. Now, fuels. Yes, it can use glucose to break it down to pyruvic acid and take pyruvic acid to make lots of ATP. But, you know, at some point, some of that glucose can run out. We can also make ATP by breaking down glycogen. We can also make ATP by breaking down that pyruvic acid. And when all of that is used up, then we start breaking down fatty acid and fat. So this is why if you're working out, doing any type of aerobic pathway, are you burning fat right away? Nope. You're burning all the available sugar first. And I'm like, it's the more efficient way. Our body knows that these are simpler things to break down to give you the ATP that you need. Yay. Now, aerobic pathway is just showing that we can take that glucose that's broken down into pyruvic acid. It can go into the mitochondria. Amino acids, fatty acids, all can go in the mitochondria too. But you can make closer to 30 ATP aerobically. Yes, but it depends why you're wanting to work out. Yep, I'm like, this is why if you're trying to do any type of endurance, at some point you're going to have to replace the sugar that your body's using. I mean, if you're wanting to lose weight, then you want the sugar to be gone and eventually to switch over to burning the fatty acids. Now, aerobic endurance and what's known as anaerobic threshold. Aerobic endurance is the length of time that the muscle contracts using aerobic pathways. That time changes with how much you work out. Your aerobic endurance. How long do you think your aerobic endurance is? How long can you do an activity aerobically? What do you think? And again, it will depend on the person. And I'm like, it will depend on the person. And I'm like, and it also depends on what kind of aerobic activity. It's like, how long could you run for? Some people are like, oh my God, I'm dying after 10 minutes. Well, that means their aerobic endurance is probably at 10 minutes, and the next day if they go 11 minutes, they're sore because they switch back over to anaerobic after 10 minutes. Other people, and I'm like, they can run a marathon. They can run for hours. And I'm like, which means their aerobic endurance is a whole lot longer. It comes from training. And I'm like, your body. And I'm like, partly is where every time you work out and train, you increase the number of mitochondria in your muscles. And I'm like, which makes ATP. So you have ATP that's available for your muscles. So depending on what your aerobic endurance is, at some point, someone's going to hit their anaerobic threshold, is when you go over to that the anaerobic side, and you wake up sore the next day. So some of you, it might be an hour, some 20, maybe 20 minutes. And I'm like, all depends on how much you do the certain type of exercise that you're doing. This is showing that after 6 seconds, all of your ATP is gone. And I'm like, that's normal ATP. You can burn all your ATP up in 6 seconds. After that, we can get a few more ATP out of burning up creatine phosphate. Then we go our anaerobic pathway, which gets you ATP for about 30 to 40 seconds. But then that's it. That's short duration exercise. You're doing your short sprint. And I'm like, and then you're done. Your prolonged duration exercise needs to be aerobic, or you'd never make it. Now, at some point, you generally experience what's known as muscle fatigue. You can only contract your muscle for so long before you just, are just so dead tired. You're like, I can't hold it anymore. Your muscles are fatigued. It's the inability to contract. No matter how much you tell your muscles to contract, they're not going to anymore. And I'm like, it's called fatigue. Now, although we need ATP for our muscles to contract, fatigue is never because you run out of ATP. You need ATP in your body everywhere, or you wouldn't be living right now. And I'm like, the main reason why muscle fatigue happens, that you can be telling your muscles to contract, but they won't, is usually ion imbalance. Is that the potassium has left the cells, and it's never gone back in. You haven't replenished your potassium. This is why when you work out, what did they say you should eat? That has lots of potassium. Bananas. And I'm like, bananas have lots of potassium. I'm like, you're using lots of potassium after big, strong workouts. And I'm like, with your muscles, replenish the potassium. A lot of times people get full muscle fatigue. They physically cannot walk. They physically cannot stand. They cannot lift whatever. A lot of the times it's that ion of potassium that they've used up. They've expended it. Now, to get you back to normal after you've worked out, after you've used your muscles, we need excessive or extra oxygen consumption. And I've yet to be at one, but there are some races that at the end of the race they have oxygen bars. And I'm like, oh, I've never been at one of those before. But to return your muscles back to before you even exercised that day, you're going to need to replenish the oxygen that you used up. You're going to need to get all that lactic acid converted back to pyruvic acid, which could take a day or two depending on how much lactic acid, depends how sore you are. All the glycogen, all that energy that you used up has to get replenished. All your ATP has to get replenished. All your creatine phosphate we used as an energy source all has to get replenished. All require extra oxygen. And I'm like, so yes, after strong, big exercises, it's not a bad idea to visit an oxygen bar, which I don't think they have oxygen bars around here. And I'm like, but it happens. I was talking to one of our other instructors. She's training for Ironmans. It's crazy. And I'm like, but they do have oxygen at the finish line for recovery. And I'm like, if you have access to oxygen, you're going to recover a whole lot faster. Because to get everything back, get all of your body back to its normal state, you need an increase in oxygen. Now, your heat production is that making your muscles contract generates heat. Because what happens when you start to work out? You sweat, because your body temperature goes up. And you sweat to try to bring it back down. The contraction of the muscles generate heat. About 40% of all the energy that is released in muscle activity is used as work. It means only 40% is used as work. This is like saying, and I'm like, I try to compare this to a car. Your car, you put gas in your car, and the job of putting gas in your car is to move your car from point A to point B. Well, what if only 40% of the energy in your gas actually moves your car? Is that really efficient? Not really, but I won't lie, it's probably pretty close to that. And I'm like, which means the other 60% of the energy that's in that gas is lost as heat. That's why your car gets warm. Same basic idea. The energy, the food you eat that allows your muscles to contract, only about 40% of it's actually used to move the muscles. The other 60% of all that energy from the food you eat is lost as heat. It allows your body to stay at 98.6 degrees or 37 degrees Celsius. But when you are making your muscles work more, you are going to generate more heat. And so you're going to have, heat levels that are going to go, increase. That's going to cause your blood vessels to dilate near your skin to try to release that heat out of the blood. Causes you to turn red when you work out. Causes you to sweat. But the opposite is if you're really cold, you shiver. We can make those muscles contract to generate heat so that you warm up when you're cold. It's the main reason when you're cold, whether you realize you're doing it or not, if you're not shivering, you start like jumping up and down when you're cold. It's generating additional heat to increase your body temperature. All right, on to my end of the little part B questions. Small, precise movements are controlled by how many motor units? So get out your little pink, orange, yellow, and green cards. Or if you have highlighters that are those different colors. So I think you can buy highlighters in packs of pink, orange, yellow, and green. I don't remember how many questions I have. It is the small motor units. And I'm like, they only control, small motor units that are really only controlling a few fibers. A muscle contraction increases in strength up to a point. Because of why? So muscle contractions increase in strength up to a point. Why? Why are they increasing in strength? They increase in strength because they recruit more motor units, which means we're going to control more fibers up to a point. Then you run out of fibers to recruit. Isometric contractions come into play when an individual is doing what? And I know, moving a heavy object, you're actually moving it. Not a wall. maintaining an upright posture. The fact that you are sitting there right now, are you using muscles? Yeah. The fact that you are sitting, you are using muscles. And I'm like, however, if you're just sitting there writing notes down, are the muscles in your back moving? Are they lengthening? No. And I'm like, they're just there. They're staying in an isometric contraction. They're not changing in length, but it allows you to stay in an upright posture and not fall over in your chair. And I'm like, so your muscles are contracting. They're staying the same length. That allows you to stay put so that you don't fall over. A sprinter is likely to depend on this kind of respiration to generate ATP, and a Tour de France cyclist is likely to rely on this kind of respiration. Think you have one on my egg. Sprinter is going to use anaerobic. They just need that fast ATP for 30 to 40 seconds. Tour de France cyclist needs aerobic. They bicycle for like days. And that was the end. Now,